Today, I want to talk to you about 3 grammar mistakes that you don't want to make on your college essays. I'm Susan with Type A Essays, and I have helped hundreds of students edit powerful and persuasive essays for their Common App and the University of California app. Today, I want to talk about what happens when students send me the draft of their essay in a document for me to review and edit. Now, this has happened many times, and over time, I have picked up on several common issues related to grammar that I wanted to highlight so that you can eliminate them and really spend your time focused on creating your own powerful, compelling, personal narrative in the essay. So the first thing I want to talk about is the power of paragraphs. It is very common for students to send me a document that is literally a wall of words, especially if they're over the 650 word count maximum. We can have 1 to 1.5 pages easily of words. And oftentimes the students will indent for each paragraph, but there's no visual break between the paragraphs. So as a reader, what happens is that is visually overwhelming to me. And if I'm trying to quickly review and assess the messaging of the essay, it becomes quite challenging to understand the distinct messages and point of view that the student is trying to get across about their personal narrative. So the number one thing that I always advocate is left align every paragraph, which is what the Common App requires, and designate each paragraph break with a full line break between each paragraph so that we visually have different chunks of information that the reader can digest at a smaller level. Also, for the Common App essay, I generally advise students who are really not sure how to begin at all on the essay to simply think in terms of a 5-paragraph narrative. So at its simplest form, you will have an introduction, 3 main points that you want to highlight about you, your accomplishments, your character, your leadership, and then a concluding paragraph. So 5 paragraphs is what I would consider a minimum number for the Common App essay, although many students have more than that, and that is perfectly acceptable. Some paragraphs may be a single line. If there is a message or a highlight or a repeating phrase that student wants to visually stand out from the rest of the narrative. On the University of California PIQs, personal insight questions, those are only 350 words maximum, but I still advocate for a paragraph break to help the reader really discern the distinct messages and to separate out an opening and closing, and even with more sophisticated essays, connect that opening and closing. And we'll talk about that in another video about bookending. So that is the main message about paragraphs. Avoid the wall of words, put a distinct line between every paragraph, target a minimum of 5 paragraphs for your Common App essay. The second main thing I see a lot of times is if students incorporate a quotation of any form, they forget that the punctuation for that quotation, including a comma or a period, goes inside the quotation mark, not outside. So this is a very common grammar mistake, but it's quite critical that you correct it and make sure you do that properly to indicate that you have the fundamental skills that are required for a college student who will need to write a lot of essays, whether you're in a STEM or a humanities major. So now a lot of students do not need quotations, does not add to their narrative to use quotations, but one situation I always advocate for using quotations, and that is if you are a bilingual student. So that may come across subtly in other ways if you've taken 4 years of language through APs, if you have some sort of language-based club, or if you've highlighted a family circumstance where there is bilingualism. But it is even more powerful and a little bit more sophisticated to incorporate that into a slice of life story in your essay with a very brief quotation in the other language, comma, end quote, And then afterwards in parentheses, we put it in English and then move on with your story. So there might be a quote in Spanish, for example, and then the translation in English, said my abuela as we visited the farmer's market, period. So that is a subtle but powerful way to ingrain that message in the reader, the admissions officer's mind, that you are fully fluent and have a high degree of proficiency in another language. So that's quotation marks. Keep the punctuation, the comma, or the period inside the final quote. And the third thing I want to mention is the Oxford comma. Now, if you haven't heard of the Oxford comma, it is simply a comma that is utilized in a list of items before the second to last one, before the word and, in most cases. So a student might write something like, I was involved in debate, comma, orchestra, comma, and student council. That comma before the and is the Oxford comma. It's not technically required, and many English teachers do not use it. Many student newspapers may not use it. That's always comes down to the habits and practices of a particular teacher or organization as to how they want to do commas. But for student essays on the Common App, I advocate for using it, and here's the reason why. I feel that that comma gives a subtle mental break to that word to make that word jump out as a distinct word to the reader. When they're looking at hundreds of essays on their computer screen, it's really critical that we don't allow the reader's eye to kind of gloss over sections of words that are grouped together. So we need to make our words distinct and powerful, and the Oxford comma is one way to delineate every word in a list that you have curated in your writing. So that, in summary, we're going to talk about the power of paragraphs. We're going to talk about punctuation inside quotation marks, and we're going to use the Oxford comma to add some sophistication and some visual differentiation for the reader in your essay. I'm Susan with Type A Essays. For more free resources, visit typeaessays.com. And if you have any questions I can answer, you can reach out through the website or just post a comment below, and I will do my best to get back to you. Have a great day.